Hey there, welcome back to the channel. If you don't know me or you've never been here before, my name's Brian, the nomadic nerd. I've been living outside the country for about 4 years now, full time, traveling around and working remote for about 15 years inside the country. So, you want to be a digital nomad? Let's talk about what it means to be a digital nomad. First of all, there's different types of digital nomads. There's one type that I actually didn't include in the slide, so I'm going to talk about it first, is folks that live in a van or a camper and drive around the US. Um, I know one person that does that, working full-time on the road. They seem to like it quite a bit. There's wonderful places to go and great things to see in the US, and it's probably a great lifestyle. I've never done it, so we don't really talk about that on the channel, but I wanted to acknowledge it. Then the more travel-oriented lifestyles, there's the immigrant choice, where you said, I'm done with this country, wherever your country might be, move to another country, set up shop there, maybe get married, buy a house, live the American dream, pun intended, in another country. And that's a perfectly valid lifestyle choice. I'm not sure that's very nomadic, though. Then you've got your slow travelers. Those are folks that go city to city, country to country, serially for spending 2 weeks to up to 6 months, usually less than 180 days, because 180 days is the magic number for most countries of when you're considered a tax resident, and you do not want to be considered a tax resident in multiple countries during this scheme. So they stay less than 180 days. And then you've got your hub and spoke model, where you're traveling a lot, you're going out, but you always return home. So instead of bouncing country, 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 you go out to a country, maybe bounce to another one, but you come back home. Go to another country, maybe bounce, come back home. You do this over and over again. And you have a home base that you come back to, or as I call the hub and spoke model. We're going to spend most of our time talking about that because this is what I know, this is what I do. The serial going from country to country is sounds interesting. My wife would not do that, so we do the hub and spoke. It's that simple. So before we jump into what it means to do the hub and spoke model, let's talk about how you're going to make a living, how you're going to survive being a digital nomad. So the big thing is you need money to do this, and the presumption is you have a job and that job is paying you and they don't care where you are, or if you've made your own job. You're a content provider, you're an entrepreneur, you're an influencer, perhaps. Not really sure what those are, but let's say you are one and you're able to make money online. And that's really the key point here is you can make money online and you don't need to be in any one spot. If you're working for a company, in the US, and a lot of companies are remote, they may allow you to live this lifestyle. You may not bother to tell them you're living this lifestyle. And so, why bring up issues you don't need to discuss if you don't need to? I know people have gone that route. If you're planning on going to that country to make money, so let's say you're thinking about, oh, I want to go to Portugal, Spain, and Germany, and I'm going to go there and I'm going to spend 3 months and I'm going to find a job working as a barista or some other, lower skilled job that you can easily pick up in the other countries, and you want to go there and make money, find a different idea. That's not a good idea. For one thing, when you're doing the serial travel, you're usually on tourist visas, which don't allow you to work in those countries. So you don't want to work um, for in those countries because you're taking jobs away from the local, and they don't like that. And it's actually usually illegal and will get yourself kicked out of the country or denied entry at all. You need to show how you're going to make money when you go there, or how you have enough money to survive while you're there. So the key is online work. Do not expect to find work in the country that you're going to. Okay. Once you figure out that you can afford it, you've got the lifestyle, you've found the online job, you've talked with your employer or not, and you're just going to go live abroad, because really, how would they know? Then which way you're going to do this? If you're going to do the hub and spoke, let's talk about that, because I think that adds a layer of fun, comfort, but also complexity to it. If you're simply doing serial travel, the slow-mo travel, you can get by on tourist visas. If you're hub and spoking it, you need to have a residency where your hub is. If your hub is where you were born, where you have citizenship, that's great. We're going to talk about that, why that might not be the best model for you, though. If you're not living in the country of citizenship, then you have to decide what is important for that hub. And first and foremost, to me, is low cost of caring for that hub. If it's someplace that you're going to be away from for several months a year, you don't want it to be an expensive place unless you're incredibly wealthy. You want it to be low cost of living, low cost of carry. So you can close up that apartment, leave, come back to it later. And I do say apartment quite intently because doing this with a house adds a security measure and more cost of carrying. So apartments might be an easier way to go. You can do houses. I just think they're more expensive. If this is a place you're going to be coming back to a lot, though, you also want it to be fun. You want a nice place to come home to, something that's got a little pizzazz to it, something with good weather that you enjoy living in. You also want very clear residency rules. Now, I'm going to give you some examples. You can home base on a tourist visa. People do it all the time. Mexico, for example, Vietnam, people do it there. They do border runs. They go back to the border, cross the border, come back in the country on a new tourist visa every 180 days in the case of Mexico. I'm sorry, I don't know what it is in Vietnam. But that sounds like an exhausting lifestyle to me. And you are then at the mercy of the minimum wage border guard on whether or not you get to come back in. And we have heard this over and over again in Mexico, Vietnam, Philippines, etc., where you go on a tourist visa, you leave, you come back on your try to re-enter on a tourist visa again, and they're starting to realize, hey, you're doing this once every 6 months. You're not doing it in the spirit of being a tourist. You're trying to live here. We have different visas for that. You have to pay different fees for that. So no, you can't come back in on your tourist visa and now you're stuck at the border and you can't get back in the country or you're getting back in on a very short-term visa. That would not be how I would want to live. So I recommend setting up a residency, starting with permanent, starting with temporary if you have to, moving to permanent as quickly as possible. And this is a fairly well-known path in many, if not most countries. Very clearly defined path. And if it's not clearly defined, then it doesn't make a good choice for your hub. You also want countries that respect expats' rights to own land if you want to own land. If you don't want to own land, maybe this isn't important to you, but if you're thinking about setting up roots there and you want to be able to have a house or a place to come back to or a condo, you want to make sure that you can legally own there. For example, in Mexico, you cannot legally own as an expat in Mexico waterfront property or near the border property. You have to go through some sort of third party facade to make it work. Same way in Thailand, you can't own land. You can own in a condo, I believe, in Thailand. Double check that. Uh, to me, those would be a non-starter. I would not make Mexico my plan A. Now, Mexico might be a fine plan C, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And if you don't want to own property there, it's not a big deal at all. You also, there's some place you're not going to be spending a lot of time at, but you're setting up residency, you probably are going to be considered a tax resident in that country, and you want to make sure that the taxes are low. Don't go someplace where it's super expensive to live. And then finally, does the country want you there? You can go to lots of countries, but are you actually welcome there? We hear, certainly if you're living in North America, north of the Rio Grande at least, Canada and the US, they don't want you anymore. You know, the people who are trying to migrate there for short term and living, they're being kicked out. You're not wanted there. In Europe, some countries in Europe no longer want more tourists coming in. They don't want foreigners living there because it's causing them trouble. So, to quote Andrew Henderson, the nomad capitalist, go where you're treated best. Find a country that actually wants you. Okay, so now that we've defined the requirements for your hub, then you've got to ask, is the country I'm currently living in, the one I was born in, the one I own citizenship, a good spot to be a hub for a hub and spoke digital nomad lifestyle? And I think if you look at carrying costs, taxes, it's not probably going to be the US or Canada. I think you're going to find that although these are great places to be a citizen, and I'm going to toot the US here, toot the horn of the US a little bit. You have a US passport, it's very strong. It's lost some steam over the last 20 years. Certainly, there's social economic things going on, outside the scope of this channel, but it's still a damn strong passport. And there's a contract with you and the US that if you're in trouble, you have the US consulate to help you. And there's US consulates all over the world. Canada's probably the same. Obviously, I don't know as much about that. It's a great passport to have, but is it a great place to live? Is it where you're going to be treated best? Does it have the low cost of carrying? Does it have the tax structure you want? And I think the answer you're going to find out is it doesn't. And maybe it's time to separate where you have your residence, where you have your citizenship, and where you make your money, because US is a great place to make money, but it's not a great place to live for this lifestyle. And you don't need those two places to be the same thing. Citizenship, where you make your money, and where you live are completely isolated items. Don't mix them in your brain. So let's dive into what would make a reasonable residency portfolio that will give you some comfort and a strong base for a hub and a backup hub if you need it. Again, for a strong spot, I think a no-brainer if you're living in North America and you're still there and you haven't left US or Mexico yet, or sorry, US or Canada yet, and you're looking for a backup residency, I think Mexico's kind of still a no-brainer. And the reason is it's super easy. You fill out a page and a half form, you go to in English, you go to the local consulate, you show them that you have money. This is a key point. You have to have a reasonable income flow. I think it's $4,400 a month in documented income, or um, $75,000 in savings. You have to have that documented, one or the other, not both, to get that temporary residency permit. And how much you need exactly actually varies per consulate. They're a little inconsistent there. So you go to the consulate, you get your visa stamp and your passport, you go down to Mexico, you apply for your temporary residency, you hang out in Mexico for a couple days. While you do that, you hire a facilitator, you spend a couple $1,000s, and you get it. You pop up there one more time to renew it, you pop up there again to get your permanent. You don't have to have any time in country other than when you're getting your initial visa and your renewed visas. That's it. After 4 years, you get your permanent residency, and it's for life. There is no time in country requirements. And once you prove your initial income for that first temporary residency, you never have to prove it again. So lock that in while it's still relatively inexpensive and you're making money. Then go on for your plan A. If Mexico's not it, go find your plan A. And most other countries require you to live in that country for a while to get that permanent visa. So you go, move to another country, get your temporary residency, live the required time to get that temporary residency, move to permanent. Or maybe not. Maybe you just keep renewing the temporary residency in that country, which is fine, except temporary residency laws change, and you don't want them changing underneath you. In the countries that I know of, the permanent residency laws, once you're permanent, you are permanent, assuming you meet the requirements to come back in the country every so often. And in the case for me, for Ecuador, it's once every 5 years I got to drop in and say hi to Ecuador. Well, I love it here. I come far more often than that. Mexico has no requirements. So other countries have every 2 years. So they're not hard to meet. Then that's all you have to do. You're not subject to the reoccurring legal changes that affect the temporary stuff. So you want to strive for that permanent residency to get your base secure and get that secondary plan B or C base secure with a second residency. Maybe you want a third residency. So Let's talk about what I did for my plan A. And I'll show you why I did what I did, and you can decide if you want to do it or not. Um, we'll talk about Ecuador. Ecuador is just one place. There's Panama, there's Colombia, there's Costa Rica, there's Portugal, there's Spain, there's Uruguay, Paraguay, um, Germany. There's all sorts of places that you can go. We haven't even touched on Southeast Asia yet. Places where you can go get that residency. I'm going to talk about Ecuador because it checked all the boxes for me, and this was my thought process, and that you could decide if it's something you want to choose. So why did I choose Ecuador? Ecuador has been in the news with some negative news lately about the rising violence. I probably discount that more than I should because, frankly, we have cartel violence in the United States. You have cartel violence all over the place. This is an international problem that's going to have to be dealt with, and Ecuador's government was ill-equipped when it started, and they're trying to get better at it. So that's something for you to consider. Being from Chicago, that's not a big deal to me. I'm used to it, but something for you to consider. But let's talk about the positive of Ecuador and why I came down here. First and foremost, it is cheap. It is dirt cheap to live down here. Colombia is dirt cheap. Peru's dirt cheap. And when I say that it's dirt cheap, it is extremely low cost of living, but that's just the cost. The quality is high. The food quality is great. The quality of life you can live down here because things don't cost much is great. So what you get isn't a cheap product. What you get is cheap cost with a good solid product. Expats can own down here. Property rights are well protected for expats down here. Um, Actually, even I think 5 years, even permanent residents can vote down here. That's how much they respect the expats that are living down here. Taxes are low. If you do a first level search on whether or not foreign earned income is taxed in Ecuador, you're going to get the answer yes, like you do in Colombia and Mexico. You have to go one level deeper. And I checked this with two lawyers down here. One lawyer who told me she wrote the article on it, and I validated it with a second lawyer. You should validate with your lawyers. Don't trust a Yahoo on YouTube. You don't pay taxes in Ecuador on foreign earned income that is subject to another tax jurisdiction. And if you're a US citizen, all your money is still subject to taxes from the US. And I still pay taxes to the US. Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes for sure. Income tax, a little bit more wiggle room. I have videos on how you can reduce that and reduce other taxes, but there's no getting away from Uncle Sam. Legally, we have to always pay taxes, and I'm paying my share that I have to pay legally. But I don't have to pay taxes here in Ecuador, and that's awesome. So I can take advantage of the foreign earned income and live here inexpensively and not pay taxes here and reduce my taxes in the US. Also, it's in the same time zone. So I work with people in the US. I like to be in the same time zone with the US. It is US Eastern time zone in the wintertime. When the US springs forward for the summertime, we're in US Central time down here. So that's really convenient when you're working with people in the US. The healthcare down here is top notch. Sadly, the public healthcare is not. The private healthcare is. I heard that the public healthcare was really great before COVID. It suffered heavily under COVID. It's not really recovered. But as an expat, most expats have private health insurance and they go to private hospitals, and the private hospital quality is quite good. Your mileage may vary, but I have a whole video on how to find the right hospital with private insurance. You can go watch that video. And also, there's international airports. Why does this matter? Don't all countries have international airports? No, they don't really. They have pseudo international airports. Like you go to some of the Eastern European countries in Europe, the only way you're getting anywhere else is going to another European country. So yeah, it's international to to the next country over, which is like a state in the US. From Ecuador, from three different airports, I can get to uh, different countries on different continents. Obviously, back to the US easy within a few hours. I can get out of my beach town I can do Panama back up to the US in a few hours. I can take a rather long taxi ride, but go down to the largest city, pick up a flight, and be in Europe overnight with nonstop. There's lots of international airports with lots of international travel here. It's a great place to be that hub for the hub and spoke travel I was talking about. So one of the things I've always found a little depressing, and I've actually had this happen, you might not believe me. I find it difficult to believe. People actually have come up to me, people I know, not strangers, but people I know, saying they're envious of my lifestyle because they see the fun of living internationally and the world travel I get to do because I can afford it because where I live is extremely inexpensive, freeing up a lot of money for travel. So I get to live a lifestyle that seems out of reach to a lot of people. The reality is, it's not. If can work online, and there's so many people do nowadays, especially in my world of software engineering, then you can do it. You can do it with the kids, you can do it without the kids. We chose to wait till the kids were grown and gone before we did this lifestyle. Other people do it with the kids. But it is an attainable goal and you can do it. You just have to go do it. And the rewards are you can save a lot of money if you don't spend it all on travel like some of us do. You can have a really high quality of life. The food outside the US is better than you can imagine. it I actually get sick when I go back to the US and have to eat the processed food up there now. And I don't eat healthy by any stretch of the imagination. There's just adventure, and you can design your life around the adventures that you want to have. You can travel as much as you want to or not when you have that solid hub with a low cost of living. You may find this is horrible. You don't like the way things are in other countries. You like the way it is in the US, and that's fine. You'll know it, and then you go back to the US. But it's worth trying because you might find out maybe where you've been living all your life isn't the only solution out there, and there might be something better for you, especially if you're not an ultra wealthy person in the US. If you're middle class or upper middle class and you start traveling, you suddenly are becoming a lifestyle that you've only seen on TV, and it's a lot of fun. I hope you get out there. Hope to see you on the road. Thanks for listening. Bye.